Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode. We got a question last week and it came into my email, and I thought, that is a good question because the answer has actually changed over time. 10 years ago, I would have said, yes, this thing should definitely be on your resume. And now I'm not quite sure anymore. And that thing that we're talking about is your physical address or mailing address. Today, we're going to be talking about whether you should be putting your address on your resume. I'm here with my co host, Dave. What do
Hey,
you think?
everyone. So it just doesn't matter anymore. Your physical address is actually a liability for the company. They don't need to know this. It can introduce bias. There's a lot of things. City, I think, is about the level of resolution you need. You could decide, how granular you want to get. If you are in a place like New York, if you want to say New York City or you want to say Brooklyn, you could do that. But that's really as high resolution as you should get. Yet they don't need to know your address, especially on your resume. They'll get that later. And also for security reasons, resumes get shared. So just for a lot of reasons, you don't need to put your address on there.
Yeah, I mean, if we rewind like 20 years, the reason why the address was on your resume was because you made your resume on a typewriter, printed it out, put it in a fancy envelope, and mailed it into the company. And the company needed to know where to send you a letter back. And so now with email address, that should definitely be on your resume. So the quick answer is address you don't necessarily need to have. There's really, in most instances, not a compelling reason to have it. City state makes a lot of sense, especially city state makes a lot of sense if you want to work in a different city than where you live now. I would actually just put the city and state where you intend to work at in the future and where you're going to go to interview if it's an in-person interview. But you don't need your street address anymore. And the reason that employers don't like this, which Dave alluded to, is it opens up liability for them. Employers cannot legally cannot take into account race, gender, religion, socioeconomic status, marital status, any of those things. And even though your address doesn't specifically refer to one of those areas, it's just not information that the employer needs to have. And they don't need to know what neighborhood you live in. They don't need to know whether you're in a house or an apartment. It's just not relevant. And they don't want to know. So you don't need to put it anymore.
Yeah.
Email address, you definitely should have.
100%. Email address, LinkedIn address, phone number potentially, because they may want to call you, maybe Twitter handle, website. Those I'd say the last few there are nice to haves that, I would say depending on space, but, keep it tight up there. Just give them the main ways to contact you and learn more about you.
All right. That's it. You don't need to have an address. You definitely should have your email address, preferably not an AOL email address. Get another free one. Put your LinkedIn address on there. And Dave mentioned a few others that you can. If Twitter is a big part of your professional world, you can put your Twitter. You can put a personal website if you have a portfolio on a personal website. If you are applying for engineering roles, you can put a GitHub link on there. But physical mailing address, pull it off your resume, save the space. All right. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.